Fox Business Network. Shibani, it's good to have you here. Thanks for coming.
So I usually ask everyone this question at the end of the podcast, but I want to ask you now is what made you say yes?
That's a great question. Right now, I'm in this expansive place of wanting to connect with others. I think COVID has made me crave that a lot more.
Yeah.
I'm also exploring some ideas for a book I want to write, and part of the exploration and the creative process comes from having conversations and just talking aloud with people and seeing what resonates and seeing what's on their mind as well. That's really important.
Yes.
So for me, it's research. You just seemed very cool and approachable and professional, and so it all kind of worked out very nicely.
Thank you. That's awesome that you're thinking to write about your book. I really look forward to hearing about it more. But what got you started in professional speaking as a career, coming from accounting and financing? It sounds like you transitioned from like a secure future to following your passion.
Yeah. That is something that I think is a quest for many of us, is we have these gifts that we're given with academically or with our skills, that we're just good naturally at things. And for me, I tried to study to become a doctor like my parents wanted me to, and I didn't have that gift. I kept not doing well in chemistry. And so I was forced to kind of think about and experiment with what am I good at. And for me, it was business and finance and accounting and those numbers and analytics, and that got me great jobs, that gave me financial security, that gave me confidence. And then I had always had interest in public speaking, but I never felt like it could be a career. And I didn't want to be an actress or, things that are more performance oriented because of that lack of security. And that's just not my personality also. But I think that what's nice is that when you start to do the things that you're good at, you start to be given new opportunities to develop the things that you feel that you might be more passionate about or that you want to develop yourself in. So in the beginning, when you start out in a finance or accounting job, you're really in the numbers, you're doing a lot of spreadsheets and deliverables. And then as you get better at things, you're given the chance to be a manager and to manage people and to go out and pitch and get clients. And those things are sales and people oriented. And so that's how I kind of got into this space, starting from a place of working really hard, starting with my competencies, and then along the way, just raising my hand more or being given the opportunity to speak more often, and then develop that skill maybe a little bit later in life.
And do you feel like you had like a natural talent for it, or did you really train yourself to become really good at it?
I think both. I believe that I have some skills in the area of communication. For whatever reason, it kind of clicks with me. But I also studied a lot. I practiced a lot. I researched a lot. I experimented and failed a lot. I mean, there were plenty of speeches and times where I got up on a stage and I was not confident and I didn't do a great job, but I kept going because that passion and that desire that I have continued to just push me through and say, no, I know you can do this, so let's keep trying.
Yeah. Damn, that's really cool. I mean, very rarely you hear about people in the professional speaking business. It's usually people who are around like the motivational speaking aspect, but not so much in business and tech. And you were able to make the best of both worlds because you found yourself aligning your passions with the industry.
That's the place. If people ask me a lot, how do you choose whether to follow your passion or your competencies? And I believe that some of us have the DNA and the makeup just to say, listen, I want to start a business at age 20 and this is my passion, or I know I want to be a doctor or a lawyer, and that's it for them.
Yeah.
And the rest of us, which is probably a larger group, is we're going to try these things and we are going to move this way and that way and this way throughout our lives and our careers.
Yeah.
And in those ebbs and flows comes the meeting and the joining of your passion and your competencies, which gives you I think can give you the guts to take the risks where you may not have felt like you could take the risks before. Because in my case, I was merging business and technology and public speaking, and then feeling like I'm coming from a place of strength, as opposed to talking about something that I didn't feel really, knowledgeable about and strong in. So that became a winning combination for me.
How fascinating. What would you say is your story as a person, like you since the beginning, where you born and today?
Yeah, so my parents are from India as well. They're from Pune in Maharashtra, and my father came to the United States to pursue his graduate degree. He went back and, as was very customary in the day, had an arranged marriage, met my mother and got married in like 7 days, and then brought her to the United States. And we were raised in Oklahoma, which is a very sort of small, unusual state in the middle of the United States. A lot of the bigger concentrations of Indian communities are on the East Coast and the West Coast, where I'm at right now in the Bay Area. And so it was a different experience for me because in my home, my parents raised me with the values that they had from India in the 1970s. And so, in my house, we ate Maharashtrian food, we spoke Marathi, we, did prayers. We were raised like Indians in a different place. But when we went outside of the house, we had to integrate. And so we picked and choose, which values we wanted to keep and which we wanted to adapt and morph. And so that became our Indian American upbringing. I have a younger brother and a younger sister as well. And so, in my life and the way I carry out my life, I feel that I'm Indian and I feel that I'm American also. And that has come with its own struggles. My parents put a lot of pressure on me. There were certain expectations, and I think some of the expectations were outdated. I've traveled to India. I go to India a lot. I still have family there, and I get this sense that it is modernizing. It is becoming more progressive, but my parents left it many, many decades ago. And so there was this kind of disconnect between what was happening in real life in India versus the values that we had at home. But we brought in the modernization and the westernization with the communities that we were around. And I'm very close to my family. I married another Indian American man, and we have 3 kids, and we preserve a lot of the Indian traditions that we grew up with, and then we're making our own traditions as every family does, no matter where you were raised and where you were born. The slight twist is now that my husband and I are not together anymore, and that caused a lot of challenges inside of our family, inside of our communities, because divorce is still a very taboo topic inside the Indian culture. And so that was something I very much personally struggled with, but I've come on the other side of, and I'm carving a new path for myself, just as we all do in life. And I'm a working mom. I have a career. I'm trying to be the best person I can be, and every day is a gift and a challenge at the same time.
Thanks for sharing that. And you did your MBA from Harvard. How was your experience getting there, and what made you choose Harvard as a school?
With my Indian upbringing, my parents always said, you've got to do the most school you can do. You need to go to graduate school. And I always had it in sort of my messages that I needed to go to graduate school. And when I decided I wanted to do business, it just makes sense to go get my MBA. And there's lots of reasons to get an MBA. I think you learn different aspects of business, you advance your knowledge. And so I think that was relevant. But, an MBA is also a huge networking opportunity. And so you meet a lot of like-minded people and people who you can possibly start a business with, who can consult and be your in your network and on your team for the rest of your life. And I feel that way. I have girlfriends and friends in my MBA network that I can call and ask at any moment for not just work help, but life help.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity to pivot. And that was what I had wanted to do. Was I came from the more traditional finance background, where I worked as an investment banker on Wall Street, and I wanted to merge finance with media. And I wanted to work inside of a media company, but it wasn't easy to do that because usually there's very few jobs and you have to know people. So having an MBA is an opportunity for you to reset and make an industry change, which I know a lot of people have done. They worked in consulting, they want to go work at a hedge fund, they worked in banking, they want to work in fashion, whatever it is. And the MBA experience allows you to, I think, more easily make that transition. So that's what I used it for. And then after that, I was able to, my first job outside of Harvard was at Walt Disney ABC Studios, and I did business development and strategy there. And so I got my foot inside of a media organization. And then I decided to change my job and my function. I just didn't want to be in the biz dev role. Knowing the products, being around a newsroom, being around a TV studio, then I said, actually, I'd like to have my hand and take a chance and be on the news. And so sometimes you don't make that shift in all-in-one job. A lot, we all feel impatient. We just want to get to that final destination, but often we have to take many small steps to reach our long-term goals, and an MBA can be one of those steps that allows you to kind of get to that dream job or dream goal that you'd like to have.
Yeah. And when you got into that media company that you always wanted to merge business with media, did you enjoy it? Was it as you expected it to be?
I think so. I mean, I think when you are listen, there's always drawbacks to corporate work or any job. I mean, no job is going to be purely joyful. And I think that we have to get ourselves out of the mindset that, when we're in our dream job or we're quote unquote doing our purpose, it's always going to be joyful. There's not going to be grunt work or hard days, because there's always hard days, even in the most purposeful professions. Even people who are, community service workers, they have hard days. Like there were hard days, and there were things that were challenging about the job, but I enjoyed it because the daily function of what I was doing was aligned with my interests. And that was a new level of passion and inspiration that I had not experienced until I started to do that work.
I see. And when you were applying to Harvard, the application process, how much work did you have to put in to get into a school like that?
A lot. I had to take the GMAT. I did take the GMAT a couple of times to make sure it was at the high end of the range, in the typical average range of in the top 90 percentile. And then I worked on my essays for a really long time, and I sent them out to a lot of friends and coworkers and people that I trusted to get their feedback. And I think that revision exercise really helped. I would never suggest just doing your applications in a silo and just doing it yourself. You should have many trusted eyeballs looking at it and reviewing it so that you really put your best foot forward. And then I applied to a lot of schools. That was the other thing, is that, you always have to just make sure you have options. And I applied to a lot of different schools. I didn't get into a ton, but I got into a few, and I got rejected by plenty. And but that gave me the sense of having some safety, and Harvard was always my dream school. And it just, For me, it had a cachet and like a sense of accomplishment and achievement that, to me, was really meaningful and important.
How cool. And would you say like your experience over there, are you able to leverage it not just professionally but even in like your personal life?
Absolutely. So I was texting with a girlfriend this morning who was a classmate of mine, and she is about to take a CEO position at a really big firm, and we go on hikes every month in the Bay Area, and we just talk about life. And she tells me the job she's like looking at, and I give her advice. And then, I was asking her I talked to her about the book I want to write, and I asked her what she's looking into, and we both have young kids, and so we talk about what activities are you doing, and how are you handling COVID and being at home and homeschooling and all of those things. I mean, I think for me, what is a meaningful network and a meaningful relationship is being able to show your whole self and talk about all aspects of your life. The mentors that have made the biggest difference for me and the relationships that I have that are the closest are those where I don't have to pretend that life is perfect or I have it all figured out. That I can ask them, like, what do you think about this? Like, we were talking about, gosh, I'm just doing a lot of microwaving at dinner time because I don't have time to get, a nice meal on the table. And even hearing her, that's what she does, just made me feel better. And so that comes into play. And then I'm launching a show on or a room on Clubhouse starting this Friday. Yep, it's going to be every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And the first guest is a friend of a friend through HBS, and she graduated 2 years earlier. And then the next guest is going to be one of my classmates, and she started Guilt Group and runs a VC fund. And the next one wrote a book, and he was my classmate as well. So these connections,
like a lot of gems over there.
Yeah, and you just don't know. And it's not just Harvard, it's the MBA sort of graduate school experience I've heard all across the board.
Wow. This is a question that we ask everyone on the podcast is, are you happy?
Yeah, I am happy. I am happy. It doesn't mean that I don't have difficulties and have hard moments. I think what I have learned in my years of being alive is that there is so much more to be grateful for, and that's positive in our lives. And if we focus on that, we really feel abundant and bountiful. And life is not going to be perfect. And if we can accept the good and the bad, we can feel happier more often. It's not just getting rid of the bad and then we become happy. It's how do you accept everything as it is and feel happy even still.
Right. And you feel like you had to teach yourself a lot? Like a lot of people are, I feel like people don't work on their emotions, they just accept the way they're feeling. But so many times you have to teach yourself, how to be happy and what does happiness actually mean. It might not be like constant stimulation from the outside world, but even like, just teaching yourself about even feeling sad or the perspective of looking at your adversities.
I agree with that. I think that that's the nice thing about getting older and experience is that you just have more of that and you can't shield yourself from the harsh realities of life, of whether it's death or loss of something or things not going your way or rejection or breakups or all of those things. You learn how to be more resilient and you realize how strong you are. For me, I see all of these tests and quote unquote failures as opportunities. And I do a lot of personal work. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest, shifts or differences in the way that I was brought up, in the way that my parents were brought up is, you don't talk about emotions. You really focus on, you should be happy and grateful for what you have. Do your duty, the sense of doing this duty. And in America, especially in New York City, everybody has a therapist. So I had a therapist when I was 25 because everybody I worked with was like, do you have a therapist? And I was like, no, I don't have a therapist. What's that? And I got in the habit of talking to somebody about my emotions. And then I started to, I read a lot of books about handling my emotions. I do a lot of research and exploration on communication, and that's really important for having meaningful relationships, whether it's with a spouse or with children or your parents, is getting better trained at having difficult conversations and getting used to conflict and discomfort. I think part of what I had to challenge was I thought that the perfect relationship means you never fight, and that's not the case. There is such a thing as healthy conflict, but we have to become better at it, and most of us aren't taught that. So how do you get better at it? You learn those skills from another person, like a therapist. You go to workshops. I do lots of workshops, or I go on retreats and weekend things. I read a lot of books, and then I have my practices of yoga and meditation and all these things that allow me. You have to make time for it, and the thing that I have realized in interviewing really successful leaders is that they are investing in themselves and their communication skills and their emotional intelligence, because that is really the hallmark and the characteristics of the top leaders. Yes, they can be smart and extroverted and competent and confident, but the research shows, and Daniel Goleman at Harvard Business School has built a whole theory and practice around this, is that the most successful leaders are emotionally intelligent, and that requires getting to know who you are, showing up and not doing these knee-jerk reactions, changing your thinking, and being vulnerable and leading with vulnerability. And I've seen that in other people, and that's what I aspire to do every single day in what I do at work, but also the way I live my life.
That's amazing. I loved the term you shared, healthy conflict. That makes a lot of sense. So many times we feel like unity means always agreeing with everything and having the same opinions all the time. But it's actually that, like respecting each other's opinions and coming to terms with it. So, what would you say is your favorite practice of like self-help?
Despite being in a profession where I'm I do a lot outwardly, and I do interviews and I'm on a screen and things like that, I'm very much an introvert. So ironically, and so for me, I just like having boundaries of personal time and my space so that I can do whatever it is that I need to do to take care of myself. So that could mean waking up early before anybody in my house wakes up to have those moments, or just staying up a little bit later. And on any given day could just mean, extra contemplative quiet time. It could mean today I needed some yoga, so I did some yoga this morning. I didn't, go do a fast-paced workout. I just really was in tune with what my body needed. It could be a bath. It could be, a face mask. It could just whatever. But having time for that. Gives me the freedom to do that, and then I get to choose whatever it is that is calling to me. And I think that as women in particular, I think everybody needs that, but as women, we need to get in the habit of investing in ourselves so that we can show up and be the nurturers and the leaders and the outspoken people that the world needs right now.
That makes me really happy. So many times I think it's a real talent to know how to pick yourself back up, no matter how bad a day goes, or no matter what, strikes your life. You feel like, what, at the end of the day, it might take me 8 hours of crying, but I'll pick myself back up because I know how to pull myself back together. And these practices are so legit that can actually, pull you out, and you don't need to depend on anyone to do that,
Yeah. I think that's the beautiful thing about these, about your younger generations and the generations coming up, is I think we're starting to destroy the notions that as women, you just need to get married and that'll make you happy. And, there's no conflict and just match up all the bio data and everything's going to be fine. And that's not life,
Yeah.
and being like learning those coping skills and self-soothing skills and like knowing this is what I need to feel better, and I don't need a spouse or my girlfriend or somebody else to do it for me. I think is so empowering and is part of the more common cultural dialogue we're having right now, which I think is so empowering for everybody, because when we're in touch with ourselves, we change the world that way, because now we take masks off and we don't have to pretend. And aren't we all pretending? We're all pretending to different degrees, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy.
It does. Talk about experience and believing in yourself. You've accomplished some huge things in your life. So I'm sure there were times when things were super uncertain, or when there were times when you thought of like a really big goal, but you were like, this is me and the world is huge. How did you work on that?
For me, it has been a false belief to think that I'm going to get rid of fear. I thought I kind of lived a life that I thought, okay, Shibani, just keep pushing. And if you just push and keep doing harder and working more, you won't be afraid anymore. And I think that that action is important, right? So if you're new at something, the only way to get better is to do more, right? And I think you can't let go of that. But I also am experiencing now, in spite of all of my accomplishments and how many times repetition of doing the same things, it doesn't take away my fear entirely. And the place I'm at now is, okay, how can I embrace the fear and move forward in spite of it, and not interpret it as being something that means this is the wrong path, I'm not capable, this is a bad sign or omen, this is like sign from the universe that I shouldn't be doing this. I have used all of those explanations to, or I'm not good enough, it means I'm not ready. I just, for whatever reason, I always push myself and I try, and it doesn't mean that I haven't failed. I have failed many times. I have failed publicly. I have failed in front of people that I love. And I think what I have gotten in the habit of is moving forward anyway, just accepting I'm not going to be, and I think that comes from accepting that we are not perfect. And gosh, I saw a quote. Oh, I think it was, I don't remember the woman who said this, but we raise our boys to be brave and courageous, and we are raising our girls to be perfect. And I think breaking this pattern that we have in this conditioning of like, we have to be perfect and then everything will feel right, I think is what I'm trying to get out of now. And when you stop trying to be perfect, then you focus on excellence. I want to be the best I can be. It doesn't mean I'm going to fail. It doesn't mean I'm going to win every time. It doesn't mean I'm going to get every job I want to have. It doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes, but I'm just going to try and be my best. And shifting the paradigm of that from perfection. And then when you get out of that, then you have it's like the noose is taken off your neck. You can breathe, you can make mistakes, you have choice. And I think for me, that is still something I'm trying to figure out how to do, is not to focus on trying to be perfect all the time. And in doing that, I feel less fearful.
I love that. I love the transition from aiming to be perfect versus aiming for excellence. In perfection, you're always at the mercy of like trying to be something you're not, versus in excellence, you're in control. It depends on your effort. The more you work, the more you're able to, polish that self of yours. So I think that's the answer. If you really want to believe in yourself, like just strive for excellence more than trying to be something.
And excellence, I feel it is more inside of you and internally driven versus perfection is external. It's you're chasing something outside that one doesn't exist, but two that is probably determined by what other people say, what you see on TV, what the quote unquote models are of success and beauty and all of this stuff versus I accept myself and I'm going to be my best. And that for me just feels like it's coming from inside of myself.
Yeah, that's very liberating and a very healing term. You feel so much more in control. I'm wondering what made you want to write a book? I know you have such depth and experience and you've accomplished so much. And you're obviously like you're a professional speaker, but you're so articulate. And I love your philosophies. What made you want to like feel like I want to write a book?
Well, thank you. I appreciate those kind words, Devika. So part of my role now is why I like journalism and speaking to people is because I hear and see things and I get to ask questions that I want to have answered. Yes, I'm interested in business and how to solve problems and how to make more money and how to create more impact and all of those things. But, that is not what drives me. What drives me is how do I be excellent every day? How can I be happy every day? How can I be a good person? How can I live in my purpose and my dharma every single day? And that's what matters to me. And so I get to go out and ask people those questions, executives, and I find that they're asking themselves those questions too. And we're having these really, I think, deep, not yet brought to the surface notions of what leadership is, what really nourishes us as humans, not just as business people and executives. And these themes, I think, keep coming up and I think COVID has only exacerbated this of connection with people, of finding meaning and purpose in our work, of making impact, of dropping the perfection, being excellent, and being authentic, really being who you are, your whole self, and not having to wear the masks, and being the person that you are at home with your family and your friends, and bringing that person to the workplace, because often we can be two different people. And in a lot of cultures and communities, like I couldn't even be myself in my own house because I had to be the way that my parents wanted me to be. And then I was one way with my friends, and then I was a different way at work, and then with my kids I'm even different. So we're all struggling with this disconnection in a lot of ways. And so I'm having these conversations and I'm looking around and I'm looking for people who are talking about this, and I'm not finding what I'm looking for. So that's why I want to write a book, is I am looking to write something that I would want to read and that I think other people would want to read. Because I hear a lot of things about I don't hear this combination of being excellent and working really hard. And then now a lot of people are talking about manifesting and abundance and, positive thinking and all of these things. And I think, well, really where the magic happens is when you bring it together. And that's what I see, and that's how I live. And that's what I want to write about.
Do you feel like it's really draining for you to be different people? Like you feel like you're coming from a position of weakness, or some people use it as like a defense mechanism of, like I want people to only see a version of me.
Yeah, I think that it is exhausting, and I myself am very guilty of it. And again, in these conversations that I have, whether it's with girlfriends on a walk or with a therapist or reading books or even with colleagues, I just see this as a really big theme in terms of the way that we all operate, that we're trying to hide that we're imperfect, and that there are parts of ourselves that we don't love, and we don't want other people to reject us for that. So that's why we put all this effort out there to create this persona and facade. And in these workshops that I've done and in these communication groups that I've worked in, I mean, it has been such a bonding and liberating experiences to be honest with people and keep all the secrets that you have inside of yourself, and say, sometimes I get nervous, or sometimes I don't feel smart enough, or sometimes I don't like what I see in the mirror, or all these things that we think are so shameful and would keep people from accepting us. And the minute you start to let it seep out, it's so liberating. And I think that we need more of that, and we need more opportunities to do that. And that's what good friends do. But what if you could bring that out into the workplace? And I do believe that the future of work is starting to evolve to have those kinds of discussions, and to create more vulnerability and authenticity, so we don't have to pretend and have these different lives. I don't think that, I don't know if you can ever fully get rid of that. But I think that there's a lot of room for improvement, and I think that's starting to happen.
Yeah. Do you follow Gary Vee a lot? Like, have you heard about him?
No, I haven't. I know you mentioned him. I don't know him.
Oh, so Gary Vee is like super in the business scene. He runs this company called Media, and it's a $200 million company. And he's a super like big media and social media personality as well. And like I consume a lot of his content, and he's been a huge mentor to like young people and stuff like that. But he actually bought this, I feel like, which was revolutionary in his work culture, which was it's driven by empathy. And so many people that I connected with in his workplace, like people have a different persona online versus how they are in real life. But since he's a leader and he's such a strong leader, he was able to emanate that whole strong sense of self and confidence and empathy even into his work culture. So even when I spoke with his employees, they all exhibited such a different kind of confidence in themselves, and they felt so safe in their identities irrespective of who they were. And that was not by accident. That was because he like just shoved it down everyone's throat on, I don't care how big of an operator you are or how much business you bring to me. If you bring negativity into my organization, I don't want you here, because people come first. And I feel like what you were talking about, that change in the work culture that we all want to see, I think leaders like that are actually bringing that shift. And now you see him, he's not just a good person, but he's also a winner. So, you're able to relate both, and that makes it exciting,
I agree. It's that magic combination, because there's so many, I think that's rare, and I agree with you, and that's why I think business can be such a catalyst for change, is that there's so many startups, people have ideas they want to make a product or an app or this and that, but what you're doing is creating a company that underneath it has a culture. And so when you create a culture that is empathetic, that supports people, your business can be more financially successful, create better impact, improve retention, all of these things. And so that's, again, talking about going back to how do you merge things. For me, it's now I'm seeing the intersection of business, which I'm very excited and passionate about and interested in, and then this other, interpersonal skill stuff, which is what I thought I would just do on my free time after I went to work, is work on myself and talk about communication and how to be more of myself. And now I see these themes happening, and culture does not happen by accident. It has to be very meticulously created. And I think a lot of startups and companies make the mistake of being product focused and then coming back and saying, oh, but what does our culture look like? It's too late, but by the time you've got your product out, your culture is created. So that's another thing that, I like to ask and learn from leaders about, is what culture, how are you building culture, and what is the culture of the future of work look like? And I'm not familiar with this Gary Vee, but it sounds like, this is what I'm hearing in a lot of different places, is that this is what people want to create, and they're starting to do it, which means that the future of work for the rest of us is going to just be that much more fulfilling and exciting.
Yeah. Do you ever want to start your own company?
That's a really good question, because somebody actually just asked me if I'd be interested in doing something and running a company for actually somebody else, but media related. And I had
Yeah.
never thought of myself as like a CEO type. I mean, I am running my own company because I'm my product, right? So I have to
Yes.
create content, I have to have a social media channel, I have to get booked for projects and all
Yeah.
of those things, and study and be on top of things. So but and that's what's exciting, is that a lot of us can do that. You know, there's now this ability to be an entrepreneur in different ways, and I think social media is evolving into that. But I don't know yet. I don't know where I'm going and what I want to do, but I think my book is going to be the first step in unfolding what that could look like.
Because I think it's so fascinating. I mean, listening to you, I feel like you care a lot about people and you're super in tune with how people are feeling. And this is the kind of leadership we need, you know, people who actually care about people and not just look at people as a means towards something, but actually look at them for who they are. And that's a great sign of like leadership, you know, the ability to nurture people and make sure that they're happy. And you also have a bigger vision towards what it takes to make a company successful. It's not just a product, but it's people behind, you know, who are talking to customers, or it's the people behind who are running your B2B. So that's what leadership, I feel like, looks like. People who care about other people. And that will be like the transformative thing in the workforce.
Well, that's a really nice thing to say. I really appreciate that. And that's who I would want to work for, you know. And ironically, though, I don't feel that I'm good at that. I think that that's what motivates me, is that I don't feel comfortable with conflict. I don't feel comfortable with always managing other people and understanding different viewpoints. And that's why I work hard at it, and to get more understanding and to get better at it. But I think it comes from me feeling uncomfortable, and it is through that discomfort that I'm searching for all of these other answers. And so for me, it's a great compliment that you feel that, you know, I embody that, or, you know, you feel that about me, because it's something I strive for.
Of course, I feel like, I mean, listening to you, I feel like if I was to work with you, I'd say yes, because I just feel so safe around you because you care. And I feel like the sign of a great leadership is intent, you know, like where are you coming from, irrespective of whether you do the right thing or wrong. Like if your heart's in the right place and, you know, you want to do good, even though you might not be like good with something like a conflict, you end up like the result would be good because it's coming from the right place. And I feel like that's a great sign of leadership. More than the technicalities of it, it's the heart that matters, no matter how cheesy it sounds.
Absolutely. And I think that there has to be aligned values too. So something that I have come to learn in my work is, yes, we have to jive in those areas, but if we are not both coming from a place of excellence and working at the same level, it's never going to work. You know, we can be as kind and empathetic as we want, but we need to be meeting their basic expectations of delivering to one another the type of work that we need to feel supported, to be productive, to do all of those things. And I have found that even in, you know, the people that I've had, you know, that have maybe done assistant work for me or done freelance work for me, you know, the values matter, but also the caliber of work matters. And I think that's the magic combination, is you want to work with people that you can learn and grow from. And I want to manage and work with people who I can learn and grow from and count on. You know, that's really important. I don't want to have to feel like I have to micromanage you. I have to remind you of deadlines. I have to, you know, tell you the same thing. So it is that magic combination that I think is the basis for, you know, a healthy working relationship.
And on that note, what would you say are the people, what are the kind of people you like working with? You know, what would be the characteristics if you have something in mind?
Well, yeah, I think it starts with, I want people who work really hard. I am not a 9 to 5 person. I'm always working. And, I will never say I can't do something unless, it's really unfeasible for me. But I have such a strong and hard work ethic that what I have learned through successes and failures, because I've had to end many working relationships, is that's the magic combination. It starts with the same work ethics. It starts with the same caliber of work. I think it starts with just so many of the shared values of dependability, of honesty, integrity, and good character. And everybody has, different things that they bring to the table. You don't have to be exactly the same. But if I'm stressed about whether you're going to show up on time, if I have to remind you of something that I'm going to have to edit your work after I get it, it's not going to work out. So, and it doesn't matter how friendly we are and how much we have in common in other areas. That is the common denominator for me for a successful relationship.
And what would you think makes a young person stand out?
Somebody who hustles is really important to me, because whether it's and it's not about working long hours, but I have had to show up at work at 3 a.m, and I never, I complain. I certainly wasn't happy about it, but when I first started in the media industry, I had to work on a morning show, and I would have to wake up at 3 a.m. And, someone who is willing to do the hard work, not complain, and do what's necessary, I think for me really stands out. I think someone who takes risks is admirable. And I think that that's what I like to see on people's resume or in their life. Like they've got things on the line, and that shows me integrity and the fact that they're not going to drop the ball on things because it means too much. They've got too much writing on it. And I like honesty. I like someone communication. So one of the other most important things about people I work with, and I have seen in successful executives, is just open communication. You should be talking not excessively, but you should have open communication. You should be upfront and out there. I can meet this deadline. I can do this. I can't do that. I would like support in these areas. I think that we can get rid of the perfection and I know all the answers. I'm the expert in all areas.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that. We can just be honest. I'm really good at this. I could use support in this area. And start from that place, and I think you can have a more successful relationship that way, working relationship and otherwise. And I like to make friends. I think people who I work with, I want to be friends with, and I want to have an ongoing relationship with. I have plenty of friends that I have worked with decades ago that I've attended their wedding, and we keep in touch on social media, and we're just still a part of each other's lives in some way, shape, or form, because I don't think there's barriers with friendships. If you're friends at work, you can be friends in real life.
I think one of the biggest things that I learned from Gary is that he talks a lot about like young people working for free and working for free for people they admire or the people they want to be like. And he says like that's not a shortcut, that's actually like a big long cut, because you have to go through like 300 cold emails for like one person to finally say a yes. But he says like either you have time, money, or talent that you bring to the table. And something I was trying to educate myself to the podcast and also like to other young people is when you might not have the talent per se, but you have time, and what you give is like your work ethic. Like you'll bleed from your eyes. I might not know how like skillfully I might be able to do this because I might be an amateur in the industry, but I'll give it my all. So from your perspective, do you think like that attitude for the young person works when they're trying to get their foot in the door initially?
Absolutely. I've had to do plenty of jobs that were internships or credit only type things.
Yeah.
The thing that I go by though now, which I've learned this through the hard way, is that I never take interns and or do like I always believe an exchange is necessary. I think that you have to keep things contractual and clear and create clarity. So even if somebody is an intern for me, I have a contract for them. I always compensate them. It may not be a lot of money, it may not be the market rate, but it's very clear that what the exchange is. The person might get credit for school, plus I give them a small stipend. And that way you have accountability. And I think that that's really important is even if you offer to do an internship and don't get paid, I think that you should ask for a contract. I think that you should ask for clarity, for guidelines of, okay, these are the hours I'm going to work for you. You know, when should I deliver my projects to you? When can we have a phone call? Every Thursday at 11 o'clock, you know, whatever it is. I think that a formalization of an agreement creates the clarity and improves communication and increases the chance of satisfaction on every side. So that would be my recommendation, is even if you do the, you know, free work, take the initiative to outline and create parameters for what the arrangement is going to be. A lot of times have to break into an industry through these junior roles and positions that are less formalized, and that's very common.
Because I was planning to move to LA pretty soon, but since like COVID happened, so the visa restrictions got delayed, and this was like one of the ways that through the podcast I started like cold emailing people and, you know, trying to get my foot in the door in the music business side of the thing. So that advice was really important. Thanks so much. And how do you find San Francisco? Like, what makes you stay here?
So I've only been in the Bay Area for about a year and a half. I was in New York for a really long time, and then I actually moved down to San Diego, and now I'm in the Bay Area. But then COVID happened, so I haven't seen as much of San Francisco as I would like. I think what I have found is very important to me is I like to be in a big city cosmopolitan, because I think you just get world-class access to restaurants and museums and services and all sorts of things. And having lived in New York for a really long time, that's really important. Diversity is really important to me. I like to be around people from different parts of the world and have cross-cultural conversations. That was very different than the place that I grew up, where I was like, my family was like the only Indian family that many people had ever met, and it was very isolating. And I am one representative. I'm not representative of all Indians. So you know, it's kind of like I'm not the token person. And so it feels so good being in a place where I don't have to explain myself. There's every shade here, every nationality, every language, and it's normalized. My kids were doing, you know, homeschool, and they were learning about Hanukkah and playing the dreidel game. Just last week there was a Japanese holiday where they were doing a craft for this Japanese holiday. They were celebrating Lunar New Year a few weeks ago, and doing a craft there and understanding about the Lunar New Year and things like that. I feel like that's the vibe I want to be around. And then I also have family here, and that's the other thing. So I think about the categories that nourish me. So it's work, and there's lots of work here for me. It's friends, and I have friends here from New York and where I used to work. I have friends here, and then family. And so my sister lives here. And so for many years, we all lived separately. My sister has been in California. I was on the East Coast. My brother's in Texas. And we have family all around the world. And I was just tired of being apart from my family. So now I see my sister every weekend, and, you know, all of those things, and really thinking about the things that support and nourish you. And sometimes it takes a long time. I mean, it took me 20 years to get back to living close to my family. I left my family and I said, oh, I'm going to go do my things. And I traveled around the world and did all the things I wanted to do. And then eventually I had the money, the flexibility, the life circumstances that allowed me to line all the things up. And that's another message I like to just share with young people is sometimes you just want to shoot one bullet and hit the target, but that's not how it works. Sometimes it's you check one box. Okay, then you add another, it's 5 years later, then you add another, and that's 2 years later. And you have to really take a long-term path to thinking about life and thinking about all the things that really sustain you.
I'm really happy for you that you're close to your family, and I really loved the point about experiencing like first class stuff. That's like the huge thing about being in a big city, because so many times one would want to settle for less since it's super like expensive and it's a big risk. But if that's what is one aiming for, and literally like the food and people and everything, like that makes a huge difference, and that struggle to make it out there makes it worth it.
Yeah, and you have to, it's not for everybody. So and there's only one way to know. I mean, I think that's what I didn't have access to growing up. And then I moved to New York, and it just became, I lived in New York for so long that I felt like I was a New Yorker. And then I left New York and I moved to a smaller city again. And I said, okay, this is not going to work. I've realized that these things are important to me, and I couldn't do it the next day. I couldn't do it a year. It took a few years, and then eventually the door opened for me to kind of more align things. And even still, I don't live in the city now. I live outside of the city, which if you had asked me, would you ever live outside of a city? I would have said, oh, never. I'd never just live in the suburbs, but life happens, and I just go into the city, and you also have to make compromises. So that's also part of the long-term game is you have to evolve your, I think for a long time I was motivated by the game plan that I had, that maybe it was set when I was 10 or 12 years old. You get married to this type of man, you have this many kids, you maybe have this kind of career, you live in this place, and maybe that evolves and changes in your teens, and then for some reason it just gets set, and then you live off of that for a while, and then you just realize, oh, this actually doesn't make me fully happy, and I've changed my mind on this, or now this is important to me. So again, we have to be compassionate towards our own selves, and willing to have an adaptable game plan. Because if we are so strict on ourselves that it has to look like this, then going back to your question, it's, are you happy? It's hard to be happy if happiness can only look one way. You have to expand your definitions of what happiness can mean and broaden it. If your idea of happiness is having a sailboat, it's going to take a really long time to be happy. But if your notion of being happy is having friends, is being around your family, is having free time, is being able to get your nails done or put on a face mask, then you can be happy now. You can be happy today. So don't put that off. So that's some of the stuff that I've learned, and that's part of the stuff that I want to share with other people.
Yes, I can't wait for your book to be published. I mean, sometimes so many philosophies you would give in the middle of the conversation are so therapeutic, and this is like good to read. On that note, what would you say was a really life-defining moment in your life that really shaped who you are as a person? If it was a book, or if it was an experience, an event, what would you say it was?
I think for me, learning when to leave something has been a key thing I've struggled with, but has opened the door to new adventures. I think sometimes we get so goal-oriented that we say, okay, when I get this job, or in your case, you might say, when I move to LA, I'm so focused on moving to LA, then these things, and then maybe you'll get to LA and you'll think, I want to move to New York, or I want to move to San Francisco, or I want to move back home, or whatever it is. And knowing when to honor that voice that allows you to pivot and to adapt, I think is has been a key, pivotal moment for me, and has created the door to more understanding, to more possibility, is knowing when to take the risk to leave and abandon something. And not abandon, I never pick
Let
up and
something
quit.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, but to let something go. Yeah, I think that's a very important skill to develop in oneself, is to know when a relationship doesn't serve you anymore, when a job doesn't serve you, a location or city or something else is calling out to you, how and when to honor that. I think is been a valuable skill that I'm still developing and working on.
And what would you say is your advice for young people? Everyone's like super full of fire, and the world is changing so quickly. It's super like strange and different for us to even like navigate our way forward, because the world keeps changing, so our plans have to keep changing.
Right. And I think actually this generation and young people it is a gift, the gift you've been given of getting uncomfortable and comfortable with discomfort is going to be a huge asset, and will separate these generations, younger generations, from other generations. As you've had to deal with COVID and even working from home and telecommuting and all of these things. I mean, we've seen trends accelerate at rapid pace, and they're going to continue to accelerate. So this generation is experiencing massive upheaval, but I think it's going to make everybody more adaptable and more nimble in terms of making changes. And I always just come down to, one of the things that I see happening is forgetting the importance of hard work and action, that sometimes we are so focused on what can other people do for me. I want to just, put out my intentions, make vision boards, do all of these things. And I think that there's a place for that, but I do believe in the benefits of hard work, that if you really want to have an outstanding life, you have to work hard at it. And that's the choice that each one of us has, is how we're going to show up in the world. And I think that that's what makes outstanding careers. I think that is what makes change in the world. And I don't hear enough about that. I think you have to hustle. And life is not about hustling. I think you have to separate the two, is that you don't have to, your life is not meant to just work, but your work is here to serve a purpose. And so think about it in that way, and don't forget, and don't add that, to anything you bring to the table. Just, I don't know. I think that's it.
No, that was really important, because so many times with like the world right now, Instagram and everything, there's instant gratification, and somehow hard work is sometimes looked down upon, because they say, work smart, don't hard. But the real importance of actually, like grit and effort and like work ethic, these things are actually important, and sometimes they could looked not down upon, but just like underplayed. They would be like be smarter, instead of working like the 4-hour work week and stuff like that. So I think nothing beats that bleeding from your eyes working hard, because you're in control otherwise, instead of the world expecting you to be ladylike and be smart, and don't like do labor work and stuff like that. So that was really important to hear.
Yeah, I agree. I think that now we're seeing there's just different approaches, and I think you're either, there's a camp of people that like, no, I want to work hard and work hard every day, and I think there's a camp of people who want to work smart, and I don't disparage them either. But if you were to tell me, Shibani, you're crazy to work however many hours, however many days a week, why don't you do the 4-hour work week? It's so much more efficient. I just would say that's not who I am. And so you cannot convince me of it otherwise. And I have a track record that has proven
Yeah.
that it works. So I'm not going to change it up. So whatever it is your philosophy, more power to you. But for me, the philosophy of hard work, and that's what I teach my kids, is, you don't get anything for free. You have to work hard every day. And that's where the excellence comes in. Excellence is, I don't associate laziness with excellence. I think excellence requires effort.
100%. Thanks.
Yeah.
Would you have anything that you'd like to ask me?
Oh, yeah. So tell me about yourself and what your goals are. I hear you want to move to LA. You are starting this podcast. Tell me about, your dreams.
So it started when I had a really bad experience at school, and I was really bullied by my teachers and everything. And being from like Asia and India in general, school is your life. There's nothing beyond that. School and college and education. And once I got really into it, I found out that it wasn't just me, but there were so many other kids who were having a really tough time at school. And so tough that they were taking their lives because they did not meet a certain percentage of attendance or a certain percentage in their marks. And that just made me realize that, this is a bigger problem that we need to address. And I knew that there's so much more to human potential than school. And I was really passionate about the fact that you can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. And that's when I decided that I'm going to create my wealth and become successful in an untraditional way. And that's how I found out social media, and I found out Gary. And I skipped on college after my school. And I started learning and working thrice as hard because I had a chip to business books and through courses and through Gary. And that's how the podcast came into existence, because Gary talks a lot about like people are your biggest ROI. And even if you go to college, your biggest network, like your biggest asset would be to build your network. And I started building up my network through my podcast. I always loved LA, but I did not know anyone there, or if I wanted to work, I was like, where I'm going to find my ground. So I started finding people from LA who were in the same industry and building relationships with them, learning about the city, learning about, what am I missing, or what are my strengths, or what are my weaknesses, through real people who were in the scene. I wasn't just anymore in my head. So that's how the whole podcast thing started. And my dream was essentially to build, like, I love business. I really want to learn how to make money. And but I really fell in love with the music and entertainment side in the business side of things, because I felt like that was the most powerful way to communicate to the youth. Self-help works, but music and, like social media and videos and filmmaking hits differently today. And I wanted to master that side. And, just merge that creative aspect of my life with the business aspect of credibility as well, because I could tell people's mom and dads, you let your kid follow their dream, but if I'm not making money and if I'm not credible enough, like, that's just empty promises. So I wanted to make myself super credible with, establishing myself, and that's how I got started on this journey, and that's how I came into the picture.
Terrific. That's great.
Thank you. So that was about me, and I'm really thankful you said yes to the podcast. On the last note, I'd just like to ask you if there's anything that you would like to share with the world, anything you'd like to talk about openly.
No, I just think that if you have a dream in your heart, for you, Devika, like you're following your heart, and I think that's wonderful, but you're being smart at the same time. You're not delusional about the choices that you make and the compromises you have to make, and other people might think you're crazy, but don't listen to the world. I think you have to accept the advice of people that you care about, your family, your friends. And because I do believe that they come from a caring place, and often there's a lot of truth in the advice, but you get to selectively choose what you keep in your head.